You're tuning in to the Bueno Power Hour podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcast. I am your host, Arthur Bueno, and welcome back, right? Welcome back. It has been a while, and it's also been a while since I've done one of these types of episodes, which is the In the Scene episodes, and I kind of wanted to do kind of a string of these episodes in the next few weeks if I'm still trying to get more guests to appear onto the podcast. It's been kind of a crazy last few weeks, I suppose, and just trying to get in everybody's schedule and just trying to work with them and such, but anywho, we're here, and we are at the third installment of In the Scene. The last few bands that I had presented were Bridgework Device, and before that was Pure Apparition, two of my favorite local bands in the Hanford scene. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually head towards Fresno, and Fresno has an incredible scene. Even till this day, it has an incredible scene. It's amazing how much of that passion for writing original music is still in the hearts of the Fresno people, the Fresno musicians. Man, it's crazy. I try to follow them as much as I can. But it's kind of tough, especially in my situation where I'm living all the way from the other side of the continent, you will. But anyway, so this is actually a pretty special episode. It's this episode that I've been thinking about for quite some time, and I've been wanting to do an episode about this particular band, this particular metal band, which are called Dead Elizabeth. Dead Elizabeth has quite a bit of history. It's a band that came out of a hardcore, I guess, metalcore band, Once We Were. And from what I understand, the songs that Dead Elizabeth played on this particular record, there was actually a couple of songs that they played. They actually used the same songs from Once We Were and sort of changed it quite a bit to make it more of a, I guess, black metal kind of like feel. If you ever get a chance to listen to Once We Were, give that one a shot, because the drummer of, or rather the artist, Jordan Soblu, who is under the moniker Reptoid, he actually used to drum for that band Once We Were, and it's pretty strange hearing that stuff. And I'm going to be doing quite a bit of titles in under his belt. He's got quite a catalog, I tell you that. Especially for the Fresno scene, he's contributed quite a bit. But Dead Elizabeth was actually one of the first introductions to this sort of, I guess you can say it was black metal in that sense. It was this sort of atmospheric metal. I don't know what to call it. I mean, there's a lot of elements of there's some elements of hardcore in there that I now kind of listening back it was just kind of nice to sort of hear. And um, yeah, I mean, it was kind of scary, it was scary to kind of listen to this stuff. But then, once I kind of got exposed to it, I wanted to kind of listen to some more stuff, and it got me into listening to like Black Dahlia Murder and With Passion and all these like cool metalcore bands that were coming out at the time, Bleeding Through. Um, they were really important for me, just for the fact that it really gave me a chance to sort of drift away from just listening to all this indie emo music and really get into something a little bit more complex. You know what I mean? And not only that, Nathan, uh, my buddy in Hanford, who I used to play music with in the band Winter Soldier. He sort of like helped me to kind of get really interested in metal. And one of the bands that sort of got me into it was Vehement. He used to play this one record in particular quite a bit. Listen to metal all the time, and it was crazy because he was playing in all these different metal bands at the time, and Dead Elizabeth was around for that, and so it was quite strange, you know what I mean, that I kind of stumbled upon this style of music and ended up liking it. I loved it. But let me tell you some history, man. Let me tell you a little bit of history, even though I had kind of touched upon it in their sort of beginnings. At least in my experience, when I first saw them, they played in Lemoore like years ago. They played in Lemoore, and I was only able to catch half of their set because I had to take one of my friends home back to Larry. And oh my God, it was one of the most insane like shows I've seen. And this was like a show that in Lemoore they had Pale Apparition play. They had Terra. I don't know if you guys know who Terra is. This was like a Visalia, California band. They were like this metalcore band that was really popular with the hardcore kids, man. But I remember them playing in this sort of, I guess you can say it's a VFW hall of some sort. And dude, it was insane. I was like, wow, dude, these guys are fucking ripping. And all I remembered really was Nick. He was the left-handed guitarist, and Cameron. All I remember was those two dudes, and I would sort of soon kind of like find them on MySpace and shit, and just start listen to their stuff constantly. And at the time, listening to like all this music, it was just fresh. It was new. You had that band, you had The Dentist, you had Prove It, you had Modus Operandi. Who else did you have, man? You had Occam's Razor. I mean, there was just there was bands that I wasn't able to check out, like Thracia. Thracia was one of them. Let's see. Who else was playing all this kind of shit? It was just insane. It wasn't Suicide Silence. It was actually Phil Camacho's first metal band. I can't remember, but I mean he was definitely part of the whole metal scene as well. Him and Daniel Dominguez, man, insane shit. So guys, yeah, if you guys are into this, Daniel or Phil, let me know in the comments the first band that Phil was in, that I remembered at least. um, but yeah, Dead Elizabeth. I mean, they were a short-lived band for me. I was only able to catch them like twice, I think, and that VFW Hall show really changed my perspective in metal, and sort of like let me sort of understand that, you know, these types of musicians that existed. I never knew they existed, and it was so strange, dude. It was so fucking strange. Um, I didn't know what to do with myself, I guess. So, you know what? Let's actually uh play a song here. So this is one of the first songs that I that got me into them, and it was actually the first track, I believe, in their EP. So this is a self-titled EP. The song is called "A Requiem in Remembrance of Her Ghost." So yeah, let's go. Goddamn. Fucking goddamn. Um, and so yeah, like spinning this in my car, it was certainly a time that I kind of realized like what I was missing musically. You know, a lot of my friends that I've made in Lemoore didn't really listen to any of this shit, and so it was it was quite strange because I was getting exposed to all this different types of music, and um, I just didn't understand like why is no one like listening to this stuff? Why is no one trying this stuff out? Why is no one in my hometown writing this kind of music? And so, it was with Bridgework Device and Pure Apparition among those bands. Um, it was this kind of it was this crazy, this that these people were really playing this kind of stuff, and mind you, there was a time where I had bands here in Lemoore and Hanford that were playing kind of in that realm of hardcore and metal. Takeo was one of them, but I got a chance to listen to them quite a bit live. They were kind of a mess, you know what I mean? But it was kind of interesting because they sort of showed me like what metalcore was kind of like, along with Holocrin, and I was listening to heavy music at the time. I really was. It just I guess Did Elizabeth was that first breakthrough into like more of a sort of a blasphemous take on metal, sort of satanic in a way, and yeah, it was just so strange how it just made me kind of feel. It just made me feel a certain way. I'm not even fucking joking, man. And it's awful. I know it's really stupid, but um, yeah. So when I got a chance to see them the second time, and this would be my last time I would ever get a chance to see them. This is actually at Cup of Joe in Fresno, California. Cup of Joe was it was a Christian venue. It was a venue actually that allowed the youth to be able to play music, where like the people that were like sort of in charge of that venue. My former drummer Jesse and his brother Nick, along with Frick and some other people, Math, you know what I mean, the charge of the soundboard and all this. I mean, I don't know really much of the history of Cup of Joe, but they definitely had they definitely had helped the youth and the scene sort of stay alive and continue on a legacy on that time. All these bands were kind of coming out, and it was crazy. They they let us smoke outside. It was like it was at a church. It was basically at a church. Um, and I just didn't understand. Like thinking about it, I just understand how like we got away with all that shit. There was a lot of underage drinking too, and a lot of drugs like going around there. From what I remember, because I was getting high in the parking lot and shit. So it was insane, man. Um, but I saw Dead Elizabeth play. I don't remember what the roster was. But I remembered like people just going ape shit, man. Like just listening to this stuff, and I was just like, damn, dude. Like people really love this shit. They love how insane this band is, and there's I'm sure there was like a lot of bands that were out at the time that were they were, probably doing just as hard. You know what I mean? They were probably throwing down. And unfortunately, I didn't meet a lot of metal acts at that time, and maybe if I go searching some more, that I can actually find sort of a collection of these songs, and sort of talk about them with you guys here in this podcast. So I remember watching that show and just being blown away, and then and in that particular show, it kind of, I kind of saw, from what I remember seeing like indie rock bands and metal bands like kind of coming together. And this was something that Daniel from Farouk had touched upon on the very first interview that I conducted, because it was a time where kids didn't have anywhere to go musically, and they were exposed to different types of music in one bill. Like if there was a show going on, any band would kill to go and play, and that was such a big benefit for the youth. You know what I mean? These bands that were playing were so hungry to play shows in front of people. And I'm sure that that's the same thing that's going on, in any kind of local scene. People are looking for bands in particular, looking for places to play music. And but and in that moment, there would be some independent promoters kind of coming out and like helping, sort of encourage these kids to throw shows at their basement or at their house, and have a party right after. So it was insane, man. It was insane to see them, and I later found out a little bit more history with two of the members. One in particular, his name is Cameron. He was the lead singer of Dead Elizabeth, and then, I don't know how long it would be until they ended up splitting. Cameron was in this band, and I was actually listening to them today. Was in this band called Anderson Films, and I'm definitely going to be doing that hopefully on the next podcast, In the Scene podcast. And from what I understand, I don't know if I remember this correctly, but I think he quit. He quit Dead Elizabeth because it was ruining his singing voice. Having those types of growls and that strain on the vocals can definitely tear it up. And he wanted to pursue Anderson Films or the like a little bit more of that indie rock side. And yeah, Anderson Films was just, that was my band. That was the band that, like, oh shit, like this is what I want. This is the kind of shit that I loved. Sort of that pretty, but it's not necessarily grungy, but aggressive sounding guitars that also sounded kind of pretty at the same time. It was just insane. It was just so beautiful, and I spun like the record, the Removed EP, for years and years and years. Just, I could not stop listening to it, and I still listen to it from time to time. I found out about Nick. Later on he would go and play and make this band called Azathoth, and Azathoth was that extension of Dead Elizabeth, but even darker and more atmospheric. And Cameron would Anderson Films, I don't know if they did like any kind of like farewell shows, but he would go into playing like a Mountain Animal Hospital, and he, like, I think he did I'm not so sure, but I think he was doing this one band. It was called Gerbertron 9000. It's like it was terrible. It was terrible grind like bullshit core like stuff, and yeah, everything kind of ties in once once I start like talking about more of this stuff in the later episodes or in the next future episodes. But yeah, Cameron and Nick, I would kind of follow Nick a little bit. I would follow Cameron a little bit, and then all of a sudden they would just kind of just disappear. And I haven't heard of them play any kind of music since those bands, unfortunately. And you know, yeah, I guess we can just go into the next song. I think this is the last song of this EP. This one was called Beauty in Details, from what I remembered. So let's give this one a listen. Holy crap. It's been a while since I listened to that one too. Oh man. This was kind of fun. Sort of just reviewing some old records. The last few in the scene episodes up till now. It's kind of making me think about how much of this music sort of shaped up from that, from that time period till now. You know what I mean? People's thoughts in music sort of change the way how they approach it. It's still kind of interesting how people how much they've changed, and it's just mind-boggling. You know what I mean? It's just mind-boggling how well they've well, I guess they've went pretty far into this, and some of them just kind of just gave it up. They just stopped, which is unfortunate. I have no information in regards to what's going on with those two that I remembered. But those guys I was a big fan of their work, and especially with Cameron, his body of work was really interesting, and I was really leaning towards that kind of stuff. So it made me kind of like get into bands like even before knowing about Anderson Films. It makes me now thinking about it, like it makes me think about Most Inspirational and like Atari Champ and the Sleepover Disaster. I never listened to them, but two significantly influential bands for me, Atari Champ and Most Inspirational. Like Jesus, if you know of the former lead singer of Most Inspirational, he's done quite a bit of projects at this time. So it was just interesting to see kind of that progress, listening to all this indie rock, emo, like kind of influenced music, and really just having it all to kind of just tie together, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I guess that about does it for this episode of the Bueno Power Hour podcast. Doing this in the scene kind of episodes is really fun. So it kind of just gets me to go back and listen to some things. I will soon run out of things to sort of showcase. I definitely tell you that. There wasn't a lot of bands that I remembered, and I may have to kind of think about, promoting some like work that people have written over the years, and sort of talk about their history. With the documentation I received from them. There's a lot of punk rock bands that were out there that need to kind of be known and be talked about. So yeah, guys, thanks again for tuning in. If you like this episode, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you want episodes weekly, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you want notification of these episodes, go ahead and hit that bell as well. And as always, thank you for tuning in to the Bueno Power Hour podcast. God, I gotta get used to that.